All right, so I think we should be good now. Yes, we are live. Hello, everyone. Just want to say welcome to the Axe Shred Talk for the month. Axe is a global network of action sports ministries, and our mission is to connect leaders who are making disciples of Jesus in every action sport in every nation. And our goal with Shred Talks really is to create a conversation around a topic so that we can share resources and learn together. We would like everyone, obviously, to participate in this conversation, but to facilitate this, make it a little simpler, we've asked a few representatives to join with us on this call, and we'd love to have you guys who are watching on Facebook comment in questions and participate with us in that way. Invite others into the conversation, and then when this is over, we can continue that conversation on Facebook in the Axe Facebook group. So today we are talking about ministry and business. But before we jump into that, I want to have each of the members of our panel introduce themselves and just share a little bit about like your name, what you do, and yeah. Daniel, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, g'day guys. I'm Daniel from Australia. Although I have Eastern European roots background, and we were out in Central Asia for about 7 years doing sports ministry and action sports or adventure tourism type business out there. And now we are based in Germany. I'm with OM, Operation Mobilization, and look after all of our guys and ministries in Europe. So I have a wife, 2 kids, and a third one on the way due August. So yeah, that's probably plenty from me.
Nice. All right. Phil, you want to jump in?
Sure thing. Hey guys, Phil Goldney from Wales originally, but fairly nomadic existence. Lived 7 years in Switzerland. For the last 5 of those, I was overseeing an action sports center, primarily a skate park, but we did do indoor snowboarding and parkour and breakdance, etc. So a little bit of my business background in managing a facility for a number of years then. But been living in Italy the past 12 years. Nearly all of that time I've been with Youth of the Mission. However, I've been interfacing all sorts of other organizations, churches, businesses, etc. And in the last few years, we set up a business to build parkour parks, which has morphed into a charity that can trade. But so I have some experience in delivering goods and services through that entity, which was initially a British-based business, but now is a Swiss-based charity. But maybe a little more of that later. Also married, 3 kids, 3 boys, all love action sports as well. So pleasure to be on the call. Cheers, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Ben, do you want to share?
Yeah, so I'm Ben, also from Australia. G'day. And I'm living in Morocco for the last almost 4 years, and I do paragliding. So I have an adventure sports business primarily based on paragliding. I do a few other bits and pieces as well, depending on what opportunities come up. You know, if I think I can do it, if somebody asks me for something, then I'll do it, whether it's going for hikes or a bit of mountain biking or coaching in other general sports or fitness or whatever. But predominantly I'm doing paragliding. So I do tandem flights. I take passengers for like little joy flights and training. So I've got some students who are learning to paraglide for themselves. So we're working through that with them. Yeah, we live out here in the mountains, which is very nice. And yeah, we're with the same mob that Daniel is with. We don't talk about that. But it's kind of, and I had background before we came here. I was with, for those that might know the ships, the Doulos, Logos 2, Logos Hope. I was with them for 12 years or so as well. Married, one wife, 2 children, 2 boys. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. That's good. Cool. Well, thanks for joining. And yeah, we'll jump right into this. Many of us who are in action sports ministry, I feel like are fairly entrepreneurial, or maybe a better way to say it is we're a bit opportunistic. But essentially, like as we think through how to fund our ministry, or maybe gain residency into a country that we're working to do ministry in, doing that through business, or even just a passion or a drive to transform a part of the industry. We basically run into this idea of mixing ministry and business. And so what I want to do is just start with kind of how did you guys get started in business? Why did you get started in business? Why did you get started in ministry? What was kind of the passion or the drive? Ben Young actually commented in and said, you know, how did you start? Like, how did you take an idea and then turn it into something that was like an actual business or a startup?
You want us to just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, I mean, I'll start with maybe what was your second question first. In general, being involved in ministry, for me, I think that anyone who calls themselves a follower of Christ has been called into ministry. You know, I think we're all called to live our lives in a way that is intentional in trying to share the good news. And so whether that's in, you know, your 9-to-5 job, in the office, in wherever you grew up, and whatever, and with your colleagues or your family or your friends, and in the local sports you do, great. Or whether it be going to, you know, intentionally going somewhere else where maybe they have less access to the message, to live out your life there, great. But I think it's important that everyone kind of has the mindset that actually, you know, Jesus has commanded us all. If we say we follow him, he's given us the command to go into all the world and to be bringing that message. So that's kind of the first thing. And then where you choose to do that, you know, can vary. You know, some people, you know, God leads them on a journey to a very specific location, very specific vocation or way of doing that. Whereas, you know, other people, it's more, they just make a choice. Hey, I'm going to live out my life here where I am, where I grew up, but be intentional in how I live my life and seek to build opportunities to live and to speak the gospel. Now, what was your first question? So yeah, no, what was it?
It was why did you get started in business? Why did you get started in ministry? Those two things, and then kind of
cool.
You know, yeah.
All right, I'm back on track. So for me, I thought, you know, there are a lot of people. So we're in Australia, where I'm from. There are a lot of people, a lot of believers there, a lot of churches. There's lots of opportunity for people to hear the good news if they want. There's opportunity for them to learn more if they want. They can go along. They probably know someone who's a Christian of some sort, or there's a local church. But there are places in the world where that isn't the case. And so I thought, well, why not go and live my life in one of those places where they don't have that easy access, and be part of what God is doing over there. And I've loved sports all my life, and I got into paragliding, and I thought, hey, you know, in many of these kind of countries, you need to have a valid identity in the community. People need to be able to relate to you and put you in a box. You know, we don't like being in boxes, but people, they like boxes, and they it's important for them to know how you fit in society. So if you're going somewhere, you need to be able to explain yourself in a way that makes sense to them. And so doing business is great for that. Coming to do business, it makes sense, especially like, so for me, where I live in the mountains is great for paragliding. It's close to Europe. There's a good mark. Well, outside of COVID, there's cheap flights from Europe, and you can travel in, and lots of tourists come looking for adventure. And it makes sense from a business point of view to run this kind of business here. And it's a very unsaturated market. So, it's not like you're trying to compete with thousands of other operators. And so I did a university degree in Australia. I sort of in between the ships and more work here. I studied a business majoring in tourism, and to equip me on the business side to have a little bit of a knowledge of what I'm supposed to be doing, running a business. And so I came with that plan, to start a business, and I want the business to be genuine. That when people look at me and the business, they say, yeah, this guy really is doing what he says he's doing. I don't want to be false or, just doing like a cover or a front, because I think that is a lack of integrity, and people see through that. And then they question, well, why are you really here? We don't trust you. We're not going to listen to what you say. They won't tell you that to your face, but that's what they're thinking. So you've got to be genuine in what you're doing, whatever it is. If it's a business, if it's a charity, if it's teaching English, be genuine in what you do. And I think should be no separation really between business and ministry. It's like, it's living life, it's living the gospel. And when I'm with my clients or doing my business, I'm doing it with kingdom principles, and I'm taking opportunities to share with my words when I can. When I'm with my neighbor, when I'm in the shops, when I'm living the rest of my life, I'm doing it as a believer primarily. Firstly, that's who I am. It's my identity. So wherever I am, whatever I do, I take that with me, and I can do that through my business as well. And for me, with paragliding, you build really great camaraderie with other pilots. There are local pilots around, and you have awesome connection with them. They welcome you into their lives, and you can have great conversations. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'll keep talking.
No, that's good. It's good. It's cool to get like the idea of, yes, you need kind of from a perspective of somebody who's living in a country like in a secular place. They want you to have a reason for being there, and so if you have a business, it makes sense for you to be there, and they fit you into like they understand you now. And then exactly. Through that, then you get the opportunity to share the gospel and stuff. And so that's cool. We have Daniel's tuning in from South Africa watching. Just wanted to give a shout out to that. But Dean Dahl also jumped in here with us. Missed the intro, but
Hi,
Dean.
Sorry, I'm late.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We're just talking through ministry and business. The question is, why did you get started in business? Why did you get started in ministry? What's the why behind that?
Can I jump in, Johnny?
Yes, please.
Cool. So there's a model that you'll hear spoken about in Japan called Ikigai. It's kind of like a model to, happiness can be found if you balance these 4 aspects of your life. And so background for me getting into business is actually probably looking at my Ikigai, and that's basically looking at what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what will people pay for. And I kind of feel like that kind of led me to what I did running an action sports center in Switzerland. But essentially, the thing that really led was just one day I felt God say, do this, take this on. There was a skate park run by some churches. It was being closed down. I thought it was a pretty cool project, and completely out of the blue, I felt God prompt me and say, take it on and diversify. And it was that simple. And then 12 hours later, a lot of prayer and a lot of discussions with friends and family and advisors and stuff, we were putting in a bid to take the project over. But so the background was more assessing yourself. And I say that because I think this is a useful thing for people listening. If you're thinking about going into business, does it fit with what you love? Does it fit with what you're good at? Does it fit with what, in Ikigai, it's what the world needs, but what really moves your heart? And does it pay? I think for that last one, I never really thought too much about does it pay? That was kind of God will provide, but I was looking at the others. So my passion was action sports and sport general. The aspect of what I was good at, I saw like, you know, I had architecture and building experience, and I thought I could project manage, so I thought I could take it on from there. But essentially God just spoke one day. And so, yeah, sometimes that sounds like a bit of a funny, silly answer when you talk about business and stuff, like it's strategic thinking and planning, etc. But, and I personally, I'm a huge believer in strategic thinking and planning. I'm a big note taker and mind mapper, etc. But again, when I look back at my greatest successes, you know, I can still see God's clear kind of words and stuff all the way along the line. So I still fall back on those things as well. I just want to reiterate, I saw your questions, Johnny, before. So we were briefed, you know, we knew what questions were coming. And the one was like, you know, did it enable you to get a visa or something? And I thought, you know, the guys that are working in kind of more closed countries, that would be a case. But actually what was very interesting for me, I was in Switzerland with Youth of the Mission under a student visa when we took on this opportunity. And even in Switzerland, it's actually quite difficult to get visas for religious workers or volunteers, etc. But by suddenly being the manager of an action sports center, I was working. And so for the Swiss government, it was like, oh, fine, you know, he's running a youth project and, you know, he's running a business in our country. So it was no problem. And suddenly 5-year visa was taken care of. So, you know, that actually works. And I think I share it because, you know, society often looks at what is your reason to be. And if they can't understand it, and like you said so well, Ben, if they can't put you in a box that they understand, even initially, even if later on it's going to lead to a conversation about God, if they can't put you in a box, there's that natural suspicion. So I think, you know, the average person in the Swiss town would have just known me as the manager of the youth project. Oh, great. Well done. You're running the skate park for the kids. Okay, let's talk. Because now, you know, you're doing something that's meeting a felt need in our town. Let's have a chat and maybe, you know, we can share more about our faiths after that.
Yeah. How did you take the idea of this thing, this vision, this thing that God gave you, and actually take it to the startup? Like what happened? Not like in your in your simple situation, but like in the, you know, how do you take an idea and turn it into something that's an actual business that's started and rolling and running? From your experience, what are some of the steps that like a young entrepreneur who has an idea would want to track with, follow with, anybody?
A little bit in that conversation.
Yeah.
I say one quick thing and then I step back and somebody else can say, there's an amazing video out there. Google like TED Talks, procrastination and instant gratification monkey. It's an incredible TED Talk. Something that's the key point of that discussion, that presentation, is that with something like an entrepreneurial pioneering situation, there is no deadline that you have to meet. If I'm in college and there's a university paper to write, you know, even though I might delay that and procrastinate a little bit, at some point before the deadline comes, I'm going to write it, because there's a deadline that kind of pushes you to it. And most of us will live our life, if you're in a job, if you're in a school, college situation, there's some sort of deadline that holds you to be productive. If you have some sort of vision God's given you or some sort of idea, but there's no deadline pushing you to attain, that can remain an idea and a thought for the rest of your life. And the thing that breaks it is when you create momentum. Even if it's something small, even if you've got an idea and you just say, hey, Johnny, you know, maybe it's somebody that, you know, Johnny wants to start a skate ministry. Yeah. Even if all he can do is say, hey, Johnny, can I meet you next week to talk about this idea I have to create a skate ministry? He now has a deadline. Next Wednesday, I need something to say to Johnny. You know, the next thing may be, hey, I'm going to run a little, you know, I don't know, I'm going to have a barbecue at the local skate park in 3 weeks' time, and you hand out some flyers. Now you have another deadline, and momentum builds, and momentum grows and grows until you potentially arrive at your final destination. But if you don't take the steps to kickstart that and get something going, it can remain an idea for a very, very long time. So that would
Yeah,
be my encouragement. If you've got a heart for it, and maybe you're not like, it's a long, long way away, think about how can I create a deadline which will take me to the next step.
Yes, deadlines, definitely. Daniel, what do you got?
I agree with that. I think for us, we kind of stumbled into the business in Central Asia North, in the country where we were working. We were already doing sports ministry there for a little while, and with sort of very small success, I guess. It's really long term over there, and I echo what Ben said. So feel that people need to have a reason for you to be there. So sorry.
It's all
and
good.
So we were just, kind of just action sports, outdoors guys, junkies, just going out and camping out, snowboarding, rock climbing, whatever ourselves. And then, occasionally we had these groups come in to visit, supporting churches or interested parties, or we were doing community development in some of the villages. And we just looked at the market and said, actually, there's a gap in the market here. How do we, is there a way that we can be true to our calling, and reaching people through action sports, but also, perhaps having some validity here in terms of a business. And so that's kind of how we started. And so for us, it was very much, I guess, find some like-minded guys, perhaps, that you can partner with, where that idea then, as Phil's saying, starts to become a bit more of a reality. And you can sort of start putting some things into motion. We did a lot of market research. We did a business plan, for example, together, and some of those things. So, I think, briefly, that's probably how we sort of started off.
Yeah, that's good. Dean, do you want to jump in, share a little way, about how you got started?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I apologize about the background noise. I was looking for headphones and I couldn't find any, so I'm gonna have to deal with the residual noise. But my experience in business as mission is actually kind of small, but it's not for lack of trying, and it's something that we in Skate Life have tried. Well, we've poked around at for a long time, and our motivation for why was we run over the years, we've actually run in our minds, a fairly successful ministry to teenagers in skateboarding, and it's been great. But we constantly were hitting up against this kind of invisible wall that we would sense from the skate industry in Canada, which has been thriving over the years in Canada. But we were always looked as in the middle of the core of the scene, and yet different from the core of the scene. So we would be viewed by the industry, by skate shops and pro skaters as, oh, you're those Christian guys that do that thing. And they appreciated us because over the years, many of them would have come through our skate clubs and been a part of our ministry as kids, grown up in it, and had tons of respect for their leaders. But because we were always doing our own nonprofit mission thing, they never really saw an integration into the actual community that they were wanted to be a part of, which was the skate scene. And yet we were part of it because we were mentors to these guys. So there's this weird tension, and we felt that more and more. And we felt like, man, we got to add that other layer of business, because that's what the community of skateboarding in Canada is based on, is the skate industry. The community is so much built around the retail sales of the skate shops, the pros, those kinds of things. And so we've pursued a number of different things, everywhere from t-shirt companies to board companies to doing small samples of indoor skate parks. And our latest thing that we were going to do, except COVID got in the way of this, was, again, I'm hearing the word accidentally or unintentionally bouncing into business by some of the other guys, which is kind of ironic. But we found that too. We stumbled on the fact that there are all these moms in our communities across the country that were dying to have their kids involved in a skate lesson. And they were willing to pay a ton of money for it too, because they wanted to have their kids to learn, and they wanted to, frankly, have another program for their young kids that wasn't a team sport. And so we found out that we were actually getting a significant amount of revenue from our day camps that we were doing, just because of these moms that would call us and say, hey, I want my kid to be a part of this. How much can I pay to have my kids in here? And we were planning on doing that and running a kind of a skate school. But we've obviously had that on hold as a result of COVID. But that's our latest kind of foray into business. But again, it's driven from that need of, and I heard the other guys touch on this too, that the honesty and the transparency of actually being fully involved in a skate scene that is revolving around the industry of skateboarding is really important to us. So that's kind of our motivation. I don't know if that makes sense, Johnny.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. A shout out and say hi to Randy. He just joined us here from the East Coast. But yeah, no, that totally makes sense. But I've been hearing a lot of like identity and acceptance into the culture, into the community that you're serving in, and so I think that's good. I want to throw out kind of a challenge question to that to maybe help segue us into this next portion. But can ministry then kind of get sidelined by the business? It seems like, as an accidental thing, like you fall into business. How have you seen the business kind of be a distraction from ministry, or come into conflict with your ministry? Does that make sense?
I'll have another go. I think that the danger is always there, but it's not limited to business. It could be any facet of your life can take a higher focus and a higher priority than it should. I think that, maybe a couple of the dangers with business is if you become too heavily focused on money. I think if we should aim for it to be profitable, but if our focus is really on the dollar, and then that becomes our focus, that becomes our God, our idol, that's, then no matter where we're based, that's then, wrong. And it's the same whether you just have a normal 9 to 5 job in your hometown. If money becomes your idol, your fixation, then it's wrong in that context as well. So that doesn't matter where you are. So that's one potential danger, I guess, of business. And the other is time. If you have to invest so much time and energy into the mechanics of making business function, such that it stops you from building relationships and spending time with people, then you've got to rethink, how much am I focused in the business? And so I think really ultimately what you want is to build a business in such a way that doing the business creates opportunities. Doing the business puts you in contact with people. Doing the business is doing your ministry. Not that it's a separate thing, and that the more that I do business, the more that it takes away from the ministry. But actually, that they're one and the same thing. And this is one facet of my life, is doing business, and in that facet of life, I'm focused on ministry. So think about, if you're planning to do a business, think about what is the idea you have, what would it look like, and think about the different phases. Of course, there's startup phase, and there's the first couple of years and longer term, and think, well, what day to day, what would it look like for me to do this business? Is this something that's just going to keep me stuck behind a desk in a computer in a room, 12 hours a day? Or is it actually am I going to build a business in a way that facilitates connection with people, and that it's getting me into the community, and that it's allowing me to have conversations and live life with people as part of the business. I think if you can do that, then there is no conflict from that regard, you know. It's one and the same.
Yeah, it's good. Any other guys got some responses?
Yeah, Johnny, I'd agree. There's points in that I just love what you just said. I look at it sometimes in terms of what is the sweet spot that incorporates business and ministry rather than looking for the distractions to be aware of. I think that there is a really great opportunity to be able to really flourish in our ability to be able to glorify God and work well. A dynamic that I've learned over my years of experience in full-time ministry is that full-time ministry is a business too. There's many elements of my work as a fundraiser that are very business oriented. And so I've always imagined a line between, you know, the full-time missionary versus the entrepreneur that happens to be a Christian. But I don't think that line is as clear as I used to imagine it to be, in that, you know, my fundraising techniques is a lot of business technique. And if people may not be good fundraisers, they may not have that good network of people to do that traditional missionary mindset fundraising from. They may be fabulous entrepreneurs that are able to do business elements to the life calling that they have, to be able to see, you know, God glorified through their lives. So, you know, I think there's a both and like I said, a sweet spot in there.
Yeah. Do any of you have any practical examples of how, you know, ministry and business have come into conflict throughout your years of experience, whether it was, you know, how you were investing your time or pursuing the financial gain versus the, you know, the kingdom gain?
Yeah, sure. I can answer, and I think I'm answering a little bit of the last question and this question together.
Yeah.
There's something to that. I actually Googled today what business is very quickly, just a quick definition of business. And the one that came up most common was to sell goods and or services to make a profit. Some organization that sells goods or services to make a profit. So I would argue that saying that ministry is kind of business and stuff, that's acting business-like, and we need to be efficient in everything we do. But I think the profit thing is where some of the potential conflict comes into. But I think for me, what helps is a business, in order to be sustainable, needs to make a profit, because profit needs to be reinvested back into the business to improve it and to grow it. And if you don't improve and grow, you will eventually fail. You know, if you're not moving, you know, you're going backwards essentially. So I think as somebody that managed this Action Sports Center, I wish that I had been way better in business, because had I have created more profit, I could have improved the business, I could have expanded the business, and we would have had a far greater influence on the young people that, you know, came into, more people would have come through the doors, and more people would have then had contact with, you know, the young volunteers that were believers that were serving them when they came through the doors. So I wish I'd known a lot more, and I wish I'd, you know, been a keener businessman back in my day, way back when. The way you can distinguish it, though, is the profit can also be taken out of a business by the business owner. And I think that's when, you know, if you're going into business because you want to be rich, that's very different from if you're wanting to have a successful business. Having a successful business means, you know, it doesn't have to be connected with being wealthy, you know, and taking profit out for yourself as the entrepreneur in any way. It can be reinvested back. So anyone that's wanting to get into a business that has that integration of ministry and business, I would fully encourage to be the best business person you can be, and to grow your business and to make profit and reinvest that profit to make your business better, etc. So, but I would say on the flip side, you saying that kind of context, I did at some point start counting the number of heads through the door, and it made me guilty, and I feel very guilty thinking like, okay, yeah, 60 skaters came tonight. That's good. We're going to be able to pay our rent this month because we've had enough business, you know. And I did start counting, and that for me was kind of a tragic, you know, in a sense, because, you know, I wanted to be seeing, oh, look, you know, Peter's just come through the door, and he's come through the door. Yeah, I want to talk to him. You know, we had a great conversation, and it was kind of like, well, oh, come on, anyone else, you know. And so that, I think, you know, when you start counting, and that would be one of my strong warnings for anybody thinking of getting into business. Often, as soon as you begin a business, you have business overheads. You have money to pay, whether that's rent or employees, etc. And as soon as you have overheads, you then have a pressure to have revenue. And then you can start forcing things, and maybe that, puts pressure on you where you may want to start compromising your values, etc., etc. So when you can operate your business without having this big set of overheads, do that. Where we're running training schools here in Italy, we don't own a facility purposely because I don't want to have to be thinking I need this many students coming through to pay the mortgage. We just, we budget it in as students come in, we rent a property for a certain amount of time and they go. We've got never thinking, I've got to run 5 more schools this year, otherwise we're in trouble with the bank, etc. So be very wise as to which business overheads you undertake before you can do a lot of business without having a whole bunch of liabilities.
Yeah. I got an example. I'll be vulnerable here a little bit, but several years back, we have an indoor skate park and a retail shop, and we sell skateboards and snowboards. And I had this grand idea that if I, started selling our stuff online, we could just make millions of dollars and just invest it in the kingdom of God, and so many lives would be changed. I just got to build out our website, and then we could sell all these products and make millions of dollars for Action Sports Ministry. It's going to be great. So I sat down, invested a whole bunch of time at my computer building out this website and getting linked up with all of our distributors and all of these different things. And basically, at the end of the day, we were selling like, a few orders a day, $100 here, $100 there. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, I just spent like 6 months developing this whole project, building this beautiful website, and it's amounted to nothing. A couple orders a day. And ministry wise, it distracted me and pulled me away from, spending time in the skate park with some of the guys that I was reaching out to. And so, as an example, that was a pitfall that I had. Now we do have a website and we do sell on there, and it's been growing, but somebody else built it because I canned the project because I realized like it was not something that I was called to do. But someone else in our organization has taken that on and made it very successful for us. And so it's, how do you balance those things out?
Yeah, I can echo that as well. I think for us, a specific example that I can think of is a couple of years into the business, we were taking out clients, and because of the climate in Central Asia, we had to push more trips in the warmer months because we wouldn't get as many clients in the colder months. And so that put a amount of pressure, as Phil was saying. I think there is those overheads that you've got to meet, those ongoing costs, monthly costs, and so forth. And I did kind of let that consume me a little bit. I come from a project management engineering background, and so that's that's a space I like to work in. But it did become a little bit about head counting, as Phil was saying. And I remember this one particular trip that we did that summer, and we just did back-to-back trips, and I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want to be home with my family. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And the clients are whinging, and all of these things, little bits and pieces, but they add up. And so I was really just convicted. I try to have this attitude of I want to worship God with what I do. When I'm playing football, I see it as a form of worship or giving God glory. And I'm not being worshipful at the moment. I'm just feeling sorry for myself and looking at this from just purely profit, getting people through, clients through, and so forth. And those relationship opportunities, kind of that Ben was talking about earlier, was just turned into like a business transaction. And so that I had to quite quickly repent and bring it back on track. But it is easy when the pressure's on sometimes to fall into that as well. So
and we'll just before we moved to where we are now, I was considering buying a piece of property which would to use as like for training, like with paragliding training. And there was this particular piece of land I had. It was big enough that we could do a lot of things on it. And I thought, a lot of great things we could do, different community-based projects. We could build accommodation, and then we could do this, that, and the other. And I still like the concept, but thinking it through, just thought, what, if we went ahead and did that, we'd have to put all this work into finding financial backers, like investment, capital investment into it. And then once we did that, we would be committed to trying to work as much as we could to get this thing off the ground and to turn it into a profitable thing so that we can pay back all this investment. And I thought, what, if we did it, we would have no time to learn language, because when we moved to where we are now, just in this last year, it's a new language area. So we're learning a new language. And I thought we would have no time for learning language. We'd have no time for spending time in the community, getting to know people. We would just be, for years and years, would just be committed to trying to make this thing work. And so even I still love the concept, and I see a lot of great things about that kind of opportunity. I thought, it's just not the right time to try and do something like that. And maybe down a track, when I'm not trying to learn language, and maybe the kids are older and I've gone, and maybe we've got a bit of capital somehow that we can buy a land without feeling like we've got to be paying back others, and we can be more like, maybe the idea is still there. It's not the right time, because it would have been a big mistake, and we would have been focused completely on this from a business side, and there would have been no relationship, there would have been no connection. So thankfully we listened to the Lord in that time. But the dangers can be easily there to take on things which are unhelpful and counterproductive to what's really on your heart, what you want to do.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of amens, and a lot of people commenting in and saying thanks for sharing and being open and real. Got people watching from Peru, and so just bringing in some of that. But let's maybe shift into a new gear here. There are some synergies that we've touched on a little bit. Things that do work between ministry and business. We've talked about the challenges of ministry and business, and how time and finances and how you can get distracted and things like that. But let's talk about some of the synergies between ministry and business. Like, how has that worked? And maybe even like, how have you, when you're looking at a business opportunity, what are some of the check boxes that have gone through your mind as to like, making your ministry the first priority? What are some of those things that you've kind of checked off the list of saying, okay, this is going to enhance this business opportunity is going to enhance my ministry versus distract me or detract from my ministry?
Sure, I can jump in. So in the last few years, we've started building parkour parks, and it's been a really exciting development of our parkour ministry. I've been working with parkour athletes for a lot longer than that, probably 8-9 years or something. But we didn't launch into the venture. We didn't have this idea. Very much, like we've mentioned a few times, kind of accidentally fell into it. But it was a really beautiful accident, because it enabled us to go even deeper into a scene we were already working with, and give us a new authority in the scene, and to essentially supply what we believe was a better product than that was being supplied. Our biggest project was actually delivering a parkour park for the city of Basel in Switzerland. And our values aligned perfectly with the city's values, which was to provide a wonderful recreational facility for the young people of the city, and also a parkour facility that would be used by the chasseurs, the local parkour athletes. And our competition was actually people that weren't in the parkour world. So by us jumping in and providing this product, Not only did we raise a substantial amount of income, which was great, to pay a number of workers, which is a wonderful part of business. You get to put food on the table for the families working for you, which was great. But we were also able to really serve the parkour community, because they got a parkour park delivered by people that understood parkour, as opposed to it would have probably been built by guys that normally build swings and slides that don't understand the parkour world. So we actually, not only did we make a good financial deal and we have money to reinvest, but we connected and served the parkour community in a really great way. And the discussions we had with the local parkour community in terms of design and what they wanted just brought us very close to a parkour community. So I remember, a week on Skype with a parkour leader in the community, just batting around ideas and stuff. I never would have got that close to a, well-known parkour athlete in that town had I not had this opportunity to do business and deliver a product.
That's right.
Yeah, story that's pretty similar to that one too. I think when we first arrived in Central Asia, we were with an NGO there, and they were going into this one particular village, trying to reach them through community development type projects, which quite often involved giving them a lot of money for projects that they wanted to run in the village, and hoping that they would pay it back over time and so forth. And some of them they did, but quite often they wouldn't pay it back. It took a long time to get some of those funds back and so forth. Fast forward sort of 3 years, and we've got this business up and running now. And there's a guest house in the village where we can now take clients to, which supplements their income. But it's more of a business to business relationship. Fast forward another year, they come to us and saying, "Oh, we need a loan for such and such. Can you help us out?" And so we had to sort of scratch our heads and think, is this going to damage the relationship, sort of business to business? But we went back to our NGO arm and said, this is what they're asking. And they said, well, actually, we do have a bit of a fund for these kind of needs. But what we suggest you do is draw up a contract or an agreement, so to speak, that over such and such time they'll pay it back. And I think because we had that credibility and established that kind of more business to business type relationship over that time, without fail, they paid back monthly. In fact, some months they paid even in advance. Over 18 months, they paid off that loan. And so that what Ben was sort of talking about earlier, that it gives you face in the community, from that sort of business to business type relationship in a way.
Yeah, good. What are some of the things that you see out there in your experience? What are some of the untapped opportunities for new business sectors? Like, if I'm a young guy who's passionate about Jesus, passionate about action sports, culture, but I'm also skilled in business, where would you point me? Like, what business sector would you point me in the direction of and say, here's an untapped opportunity that you could go into? I constantly, here at the skate park, we have kids come in and they go, "Oh, I started a new t-shirt company and it's going to sell out. It's going to be nuts." And I'm like, yeah, okay. That's a red ocean. That one's tapped out. Just, stop. But what are some of the untapped opportunities for new business within the world of action sports and ministry? You don't have to raise your hand. You can just go.
Yeah. So, okay, I really think, and I may be wrong, so those that take my advice and jump in 5 years from now, feel free to come back and say, that was a terrible idea, Phil. I just wasted 5 years of my life. But having been involved in tours and helping to kickstart some tours, a whole movement built up around the parkour tours around the world, this thing called Inspire that we're involved in. But essentially, it was very simple. we just had a few basic values. It was one was travel, one was adventure. It was going to be a lot of fun. But we added like two kind of things that your average travel business wouldn't add, which, you know, you'll find travel and adventure in lots of travel businesses. But we added two other elements, and it just distinguished us from the competition. And I think it was helped to make us very successful. Another one was we just had the value of family, and we had a core group of believers that would travel with these people. You know, we kind of, you know, we'd rent a big 50-seater bus and drive around Europe and say, who wants to get on the bus? And any random, you know, park athlete would jump on the bus, pay a little money for the next leg. And it just, you know, begin the summer, rented a 50-seater bus for 6 weeks and the driver for 20,000. And we didn't make a loss because people got on the bus. But I think two other values that we added to our business model, although we didn't really run it as a business, was family. We just said that we were going to love everybody that got on the bus. This core team that was traveling on the bus was going to love everybody that got on the bus. And the next was kind of mission, intentional mission, even in the non-religious sense. We just encouraged everybody that got on the bus to give something back to the community went to. So obviously for the believers, they were sharing their faith, but for the non-believers, they were like, hey, encourage the kid to start parkour and get moving, get off his phone and eat healthy or whatever it may be. So there was this intention, and most people joined the tours because they thought that's kind of cool, going to travel around Europe and jump around on stuff. But the thing that kept them on the bus and the thing that kept them coming back and going on other tours was they're like, well, I've never experienced community like that before. And I think there's a huge potential. If you where you could prove that this was going to be a place where there was going to be real community, alongside all the crazy adventure stuff. You know, I can imagine a skate tour business going around, you know, all the best skate spots and skate parks in the US. And if you had a big bus and a group of, you know, believers that were going to love everybody jumped on the bus, but people still had to pay, you know, enough to cover the fuel and a little bit extra. So, you know, there was some profit to reinvest. I really think from my limited experience, having seen something snowball from one kind of accidental tour into about a dozen tours all the way around the world, there's a huge, I think, hole in the market for that, where people are desperately crying out for community and adventure, something kind of, you know, a little bit breaking away from their phones and actually something tangible and kind of life-changing. And there's all sorts of streams with gap years and existential experience, blah, blah, that would come into that. But I think there's real, it's not for me, but another life. But I think if you're
opportunity,
out there, yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for that. Action sports.
Any other ideas?
T-shirt? No, just kidding.
Yeah, Johnny, I mentioned it a little earlier, but we very much see a trend in Canada, and it's probably beyond Canada as well. People are turning to individual sports, especially in this COVID season, mountain biking, running, skateboarding, things like that, where they don't have to depend on a team with restrictions that way. And there is a ton of people that want to get involved, to like parents that want to get their kids involved in a lesson where they can learn that individual sport. Obviously, skateboarding sales are through the roof right now in our industry. And any kind of lesson that we can offer is just a huge business opportunity. So I'd say that's a trend that we're seeing right now, is just simple lessons and things like that.
Yeah, we flat out run out of skate lesson coaches here at the shop because we have so many kids coming in wanting lessons. What other ideas?
Well, this is a little bit quite sports specific, but over here certainly, you know, you talk about, you know, coaching. You know, you run out of coaches to train all the people that want it. And here, I mean, I'm just training a handful of people at the moment because I'm still getting some things in place for the business, and there's still some paperwork and there's still lots of stuff. Anyway, it's a slow process, but I've had countless local people who have come and said, hey, you know, looks really cool. Like, I'd really like to learn, you know, how much is it? How can I do it? And so certainly, you know, there's, you know, like in Europe or whatever, of course, there's lots of paragliding schools and so on. But I guess you maybe wouldn't necessarily expect, you know, I'm out in the mountains of these little villages and people live, you know, it's a very simple country life. And yet there's still a thirst for adventure and for something that's different. amongst these people, and and I would imagine that it's not limited to paragliding. Probably if people were offering some other sport which was different from usual, because here people have time generally, and so they've got time to invest. They don't have so much money necessarily, but they've got the time to invest, and they're hungry to do things that are different. And so I think possibly in some more rural areas where maybe traditionally you wouldn't expect to see a big intake of certain adventure or extreme sports, maybe there is a market there, but it would have to be run on a different business model in terms of pricing and so on. The expectations would need to be different, but maybe there is an untapped market, in some of these more rural areas.
Yeah, that's good. Well, do you guys have any? I know we're gonna wrap up here pretty quick, but do you have any books, classes, podcasts, YouTube content that have been really helpful for you in thinking through this concept of business and ministry, and ministry and business, and how the two interact, that you could share with us?
Just a few quick.
Yeah, there's a really cool book that I've read quite a bit. It's called The Bible, and you may have heard of it. No, seriously, I think the starting point for any of us in what we're doing really is having that clear understanding of the gospel for ourselves, and as believers, our place in the world. That our focus should be on living out and speaking out the gospel in whatever context we are in. And the more intentional we can be about that, whether it's in our hometown or whether it's on the other side of the world, the more of us that really embrace that, then the faster that we'll see the kingdom grow. Because that's what God has told us to do. God has told us to live in that way. And so, you asked about a book. Sorry, I just started on a ramble. So read the Bible. It's a good book. I'll shut up.
It is. That's good. What else? Are there other books or?
I wasn't going to be as specific as that, but just basically, I think 3 things from me: a business plan. Somehow, if you're not business minded, get someone to help you with a business plan, or find some good examples, or that's definitely helpful. Some kind of business training, if you can do it, running your own business type course, or some basics or something if you've never done that kind of stuff before. And maybe going and shadowing somebody that's running a business somewhere. Spend some time with them, especially if you are fairly fresh and don't have a lot of experience. On the job training, learning the ropes. So nothing so specific, but those 3 from me.
I think it's
just
great.
Add something quick.
Oh yeah.
So just there are a number of coalitions or groups of people who are there to try and help people who want to do business, intentional business. There's business as mission, business for transformation. There's a few different names and so on, but there are groups of people where, people who have been doing business successfully for decades, who want to help like-minded people run businesses around the world intentionally, profitably and sustainably, but very intentionally in terms of gospel focus. And so there are resources there, and people who will mentor you, and you can ask them questions, say, how can I do this, or what do you suggest about that? And they'll walk with you through that journey. So there are lots of people available, with their expertise, who can assist you in that journey.
I would venture to bet that there's some who are in our ACTS Facebook group who would be more than willing to help out, to lend a hand, to help with a business plan, even to allow you to help shadow them. Some flights have opened back up and stuff, but I've had people fly here, follow me around, and just kind of see what I do within my business. And so I'm sure that there are some on this Zoom or on this Facebook group that would be willing. to help out if you have a business idea and you need some help out trying to get moving. But I actually want to set out a challenge for us, and we'll wrap up with this. That if you have an idea that you're trying to get started and turn into a business, or if you're trying to get started in ministry, whatever it is, right towards the beginning, somebody was talking about setting deadlines. And so I want to set a deadline for us that by the end of the week, I want you to put a goal into the comments of something that you're going to try to accomplish. And allow this group to hold you accountable to that. So put it in there that like, hey, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z, or I'm gonna meet with this person, or I'm gonna write down, my mission statement, or whatever it is. That's the challenge. Set a deadline for yourself. Comment that in, and get some accountability, and let's see how we as a group, as ACTS, can help to maybe start and launch something new. And I think that could be a lot of fun. So that's all the time that we have for today. I want to thank all of our guys here on our panel who joined in this conversation. I want to thank everybody who's been watching online. We've had a great group of people out there commenting in. Basically, like, this is your community of peers, leaders who are in action sports ministry all over the world. So let's continue this conversation here on Facebook, and share this with those on your team so that we can all learn together and grow together. Next month, we're going to be hosting another Shred Talk. It's going to be on being the trusted God person in action sports community, kind of like chaplaincy. So be sure to tune in next month and check that out. What does it mean to be the trusted God person in your action sports community? Some of the challenges and benefits of that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again sometime soon.